All right, my friends. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Denial of the Day podcast. I have an amazing guest. His name is Will Curtis. He is a commercial real estate broker, but I would say more of like a commercial real estate expert because he does way more than just commercial real estate brokerage. Will, welcome, my friend. How are you doing today?
Okay. Good, Taylor. Thank you so much for having me. And
Yeah,
been watching each other through social media for a minute now.
yeah.
So excited to finally jump on and actually be on the show with you.
That's right, man. So let's just talk. It's funny. We met through LinkedIn, and I
Right.
think a lot of people don't really know the power of LinkedIn.
It,
And
it's a
like
it's a
when I talk to
sleeper.
most folks, they're just like, "Why are you on LinkedIn?" But go ahead.
No, I think it's a sleeper, and I kind
It
of
is.
joke that it was my gateway social media. That LinkedIn for the most part, they want you to post once a day. You kind of
Right?
get penalized. You post more than that. So I was like, huh.
Yeah.
I just got to make up good content once a day, and I can post and then just engage with other people. And
Yeah.
uh, we started, at least in my LinkedIn journey, I think we started that in like 2018, 2019, kind of pre-COVID,
Yeah.
maybe more than that, maybe 2017.
That's
And
funny.
we kind of found that things were working. I had a bunch of old heads that had been in commercial brokerage for a long time tell me I was wasting my time and
Yes.
nobody, nobody's going to use this internet thing. And
Yeah. Just a fad, man.
yeah, and I think eventually we found I was still working in corporate real estate, but we had found that almost 20% of what we were bringing in the door was through my LinkedIn, where we had two full-time business development folks that were out there doing their job, and here I was just a kind of an asset management type role,
Right.
you know, hold my own against two very capable professionals, but we just had it dialed in that well, and
Yeah,
just
that's
definitely
cool.
getting things going.
Yeah. Dude, well, I won't spend a lot of time talking about it, but I had a very similar experience, and it's so funny. It was my January 2018 resolution. I'm like, I don't know what LinkedIn is even about. Like, I have a profile, I have like 200 connections. I'm never on this stupid platform. And I was like, I'm going to build this up because now I had switched over my business to really be more business to business than business to consumer. And I was like,
Mhm.
I'm going to figure this out. And man, we have, to your point, it has been an incredible part of our revenue. So many people see us on LinkedIn and connect with us. And then just like you and I, we're sitting here because of that platform. We have never really met each other in person and had never met each other before. But now we are connected because the power of the internet gods and everything that goes with that is it's made me so much money over the last 6, 7 years that it's hard to even fathom. But I started with like 230 connections, and most of my connections on LinkedIn are super targeted. And I think I have like almost 7,600 connections now.
Yeah. What I think you do really well, and I always like, man, I got to be more like this guy, is that, you do a great job at, hey, you got a promotion, you got a birthday, and everybody sends the
Yeah.
canned birthday or whatever. Congratulations on the promotion. But I can remember one specific, like you sent me a voice message like, Will, congrats on the promotion, man. I can tell you're working hard or something along those
Yeah.
lines. I was just like,
Yeah.
this dude? We've never talked. We've never really had a conversation outside of, the little stuff here on LinkedIn. I was like,
Right.
I can hear more out about this guy. And at that point, then started looking into you, started looking into what you do, the claim side of things, and you know, it worked perfectly for you, right?
That's awesome, man. And that's the key, I think, is because everything is so canned and you can just like on a reply on, you're scrolling, you can be like, hey, good job. Everybody else is doing the same thing. Like that
Right.
means nothing. Right. And so I've really taught my team, and I've been self-employed going on 21 years this year. And I quickly learned at the beginning of my self-employment journey that people can't see better, but they can see different. And different is better. And so when you experience that difference, like you got to, everybody's like, hey, happy birthday, happy birthday. I sent you a voice message, which nobody's doing because guess what? It takes time and effort and energy, but it creates the connection and the relationship. So it makes a big difference. But it's interesting though, because we're here to talk about claims and you're in the commercial real estate world. So let's change directions a little bit relating to that. You and I talked before we started, and you had mentioned that you have done claims in this aspect, or you personally have. Like, give me a little bit of background and let's just talk about that a little bit and see where this takes us.
Yeah, I think one of the people I hate in life the most is dealing with insurance companies, right? And I think that's probably
You're not the only
probably
one.
Probably not, yeah, probably not alone in that whatsoever. And I can remember from my property management aspect management days when I was really on boots on the ground doing this stuff.
Yeah,
Uh, man, when you had an incident like you already knew the insurance company was going to just harass you, it was going to be
right.
a pain. Could you get it, there? Did you do all these other steps? And it just was painful. I can recall I was probably I was definitely going for Father of the Year at this point. Working late. My son was in high
Right.
school playing lacrosse. I missed just about every daggum game that he had. I
Oh
was
no.
finally going to cut out of work a little bit early. I was going to make it there, try to be dad of the year finally. And we had some work going on. My building engineer was going to be hanging out to make sure and babysit the contractor so that I could go and actually be dad for a little bit. And I get about 15 minutes down the road. My engineer calls me, and I was like, "This isn't good." He's like, "You got to come back. There's water everywhere." And I was like, "Maybe I'm gonna
No.
quit. Maybe I'm just not gonna show up. I'm gonna quit. I'm done with this." I turn around, and what ended up happening is they were changing out water heaters. The new apprentice came through, had the new shiny, tools and all that kind of stuff, and was like, "Look at these. I can cut it with just pushing a button. Cut the pipes with just pushing a button. Goes up above the cutoff." Snips it, and then all of a sudden
No.
cut off water. And my engineer wasn't the typical engineer for that building. So we had a good, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes while the engineer was trying to go shut it off. And of course, you got residual water and all that. So,
Right.
I mean, it was a multi-million dollar claim. It was huge because it was a doctor's office we flooded with equipment and everything. And
Oh.
man, it was,
How did that claim go? Like let's talk about that. Like how
yeah.
was that interacting with the insurance company and dealing with the adjuster?
So what I'll say was we had multiple adjusters on this one. The first adjuster when we came in was actually really cool about it, very laid back. I'd never worked with an insurance adjuster before, and he kind of walked through and was actually telling me, he's like, "Yeah, here's all the money you can make. Here's the great things about it, especially when the hurricanes come through and all that kind of stuff." Kind of
Mhm.
talking a little bit
Okay.
about business.
Yeah.
And then it was interesting when he came back, his claim didn't cover everything that we needed. So we had to go back and while he was a cool dude and it didn't quite cover everything. So they had to bring out another adjuster to kind of look at it. And ultimately the attorneys had to get involved because it was the vendor's insurance who was coming out. So we had their insurance fighting our insurance
Third
and
party
we had to
claim.
hire an independent, adjuster to come out and, not with our insurance, not with their insurance, and basically put the whole thing together and say what it was. And that's where I think that claim came up at like 2.5, $2.4 million because there was so much damage, not just that suite, but the suite next door and everything else just from 15 minutes worth of a water leak.
Dang, that's crazy. Well, what I'm guessing probably happened was the first guy that was cool is an IAA, an independent adjuster that came out because
Right.
especially if he's chasing hurricanes, stuff like that. And they have a certain level of authority, and how they get paid is the larger estimates they write, the more they make. It's called a fee schedule. So if you write between $0 and $10,000, this is what you make. 10,001 to 25, and it just the fee schedule keeps going up. So if they hit a certain tier, they get paid a certain dollar amount. So they want your claim to be a little bit higher. But insurance
Uh,
companies recently have figured out that doesn't serve them, even though those people are doing a good job usually and just like getting claims actually paid and moving on to the next thing because that's how they get paid. The insurance companies have recently found out that if they send someone out that doesn't have the authority to make a decision on a claim, but actually get the claim started, it appeases the insured, but doesn't actually get them what they need, right? And so there's so many different things to go through that. And also in your claim, it's interesting because the vendor, the other engineer or whoever it was, snipped the pipe at the wrong spot, and then you had to go after his insurance. So it's a third party claim. So your insurance is probably subrogating to their insurance. And so there's so many things that go into that. But if you had to say there was one main lesson that you learned from that insurance claim, what do you think that would be?
uh, Verify my vendor had insurance. Um,
That's right.
and honestly, that was part of the struggle was that remember
Yeah.
that there was a new vendor coming to the building. We hadn't used them in the past, and suddenly we're like, all right, well, where's your insurance? Oh, we'll get it to you. We'll get it to you. And like we're literally like, you're not showing up tonight unless you show us the insurance. And I was glad that my boss was just, you got to check it. You got to make sure it's good. You got to verify that it's the case as well. Not that somebody just wrote
Right.
wrote on there that they had a policy, but actually go and verify that the policy was real. And
Smart.
horror stories from them where you'll get, insurance agents that'll just fill it out, take your money, but it's actually not insured. and do things like that. So I mean, it was that was my first big claim that we had dealt with. We had a couple smaller ones here there that wasn't, was pretty straightforward. But that was the first big claim that we had that came through, and I was glad we had their insurance in place. Realized the documentation that we had to have.
Yeah,
They were
that's solid.
they were they were looking at, well, you should have been able to shut off the water sooner because you had these plans. And, as the attorneys got involved, it was a lot. And, from there we went back and, okay, our building book needs to be there. We didn't have our regular engineer, so he needed to be trained on where they were. We needed to mark off where water cutoffs were. And to the other party's effect, if you walked outside the suite, there was a water cutoff right there at the suite, but it wasn't labeled. My engineer didn't know because it wasn't his normal building. It was covering for
Oh,
somebody
man.
else on vacation. So, could you argue that there was more damage because we didn't know what we were doing? You could, but again, it was a 15 minutes. He looked, couldn't figure it out. They tried to contain the water. He ran, to the other end of the property and shut the water off.
Yeah. Well,
So,
to your point, that's what insurance is for, right? If we didn't ever have accidents because we had all these contingency plans in place that never went awry and everything was perfect, then why the hell would we have insurance, right? But insurance
yeah,
companies will tell you that. Well, you should have done this. You should have. Yeah, it's real easy to look retrospectively, and say this is what should have been done. Of course, we know that now. But what happened? Was it a covered cause of loss? Was it sudden and accidental? And if so, then like all these things start kicking into place with most insurance policies that cover physical damage that is caused by something sudden and accidental, which that was. And
yeah.
so anyhow, I don't know all the details of the claim, but in your commercial real estate broker world, have you ever had a deal fall apart because a claim was unresolved?
Not claims. I'll tell you the thing that we're starting to run into a whole lot more is just in general insurance rates.
Yeah, cost of
I've
insurance.
got about 15 or so, agents in our office that are doing things. And I think in the last, 3 or 4 months, they're going out there trying to buy properties. They go get the quote from the insurance company and it's now, twice, three times higher than what it was. And
Right.
you can't underwrite the deal. And even when you do our underwriting, you give a little bit of fluff to what you think it's going to be, knowing it's going to
Right.
go up. But I mean, you don't underwrite two or three times what that
Right.
insurance rate's going to be. And
There
we're
hasn't been enough fluff because the
right.
rates are so crazy. Yeah.
And luckily, we're in Texas where we still have all the insurance companies. We don't haven't had anybody pull out. We haven't had those things, and we're in San Antonio as well. So when it comes to risk, we're outside the hurricane zone. We're for the
Right.
most part out of earthquake zones. We
Mhm.
get a little bit of wind, we're a little bit of fire,
Some
kind
have.
of that's there. But for the most part, it's lack of water and fire. But we're still relatively low, so our insurance rates aren't crazy,
Yeah.
but they're still basically being subsidized by the other issues and the rates that are going up, which have absolutely killed deals.
Yeah. There's two things I'll bring up related to what you just brought up, which is one, the Florida market. If you look at home sales in Florida, they're just getting demolished because nobody can afford the insurance. And
Right.
rates are higher for mortgage rates right now, too. So it's like this perfect storm, pardon the pun, but ultimately it's like everything's coming together where people are just like, we're not touching that. And so there are, I think, if I remember correctly, the last report I saw was either it's 125,000 or 150,000 homes that are for sale in the Florida market right now that
Hmm.
aren't really moving very quickly. So that's number one is that it's really slowing down the rates or the purchases because the insurance rates are so high. The other thing is what you had just said is like subsidizing. I don't think most people understand this is even though you're in Texas, you are also paying for across the country. If you are insured by a national insurer, they're taking their whole risk pool, which is maybe international or
Mhm.
national, and then basing the rates that you pay, the premiums that you pay, related directly to the losses and their loss ratios across the country. And most people don't get that. The other thing, too, that I really want to instill in people, viewers, for both yours and mine, are this is the thing is that if you don't make a claim because you're scared that your rates are going to go up, and everybody else around you makes a claim, you are just subsidizing and paying for their repairs because guess what's going to happen to your rates, no matter what, if you make a claim or not?
Yep, they're going to go
They're,
up.
they're going to go up too. And so I have a lot of people, mostly older folks, that are like, I don't want to make a claim. Okay, you don't have to, but you're going to pay higher rates, and you didn't get your property fixed. It's
Mhm.
like the worst of both worlds. So it's a tough situation there in relation to that. So what are you guys doing with these increased interest or insurance rates?
So, I mean, one of the things we've kind of shifted, and a lot of us kind of use the same set of insurance companies, and I know that's one of
Yep.
the things we've kind of sat down and done is now expand our pool of insurance providers, expand our pool of insurance brokers as well,
Yeah.
and start bidding that out as well. And yeah, I think back in the day, you could sit down and you had the three, four, larger firms, maybe somebody who's a little bit local that could sit down, give you a quote and all that, but now, I mean, it's so competitive that you almost have to have a couple of brokers out there shopping for you. And, this broker will shop these firms and that broker shops these firms, and maybe you get a little bit of overlap, but it's really the struggle that comes in and making sure it's being done. And I think the other side of it is making sure that they are adequately insuring. So if you tell them, hey, the rates are too high, well, that's fine. We'll take that $1 million property, but we'll bring it down to 500,000, or we'll take this coverage or that coverage out, and
Yeah.
and kind of change where it's getting lower, but you're getting less insurance, which makes sense, but it may not be the right insurance for you. And that's a lot of what we're running into as
Yeah.
well, is that we can get the insurance rates back down, but it's not enough insurance to really cover if there really was a claim.
Yeah. Or a total loss like a fire, God forbid. But if it's a hail related claim, you might have the right coverage or enough coverage for something like that. But if it was a bigger claim, and I think you're talking about exactly what most people do is they're like, hey, this is what I can afford. And to be able to get into this property, if it's a house or commercial, like this is what I'm going to have to give up on and or do that. And the flip side of that is I always say cheap insurance is cheap until you make a claim.
Right.
And then you realize how expensive insurance can be because what we're noticing in the marketplace right now is insurance companies will come out. We'll just use round numbers. You have $100,000 claim. They come out and they initially are like, well, we're going to pay you 50. No, it doesn't work because I need 100,000. Okay, we're going to pay you 70. And then it kind of starts to stair step. And then after 60 to 90 days, they're at like, hey, we'll pay you 88,000. That's it. No more. They know they owe 100,000, but they diminish it just enough where a public adjuster like myself doesn't want to take the claim because it doesn't behoove me to take it. I would take that claim and I would actually lose money
Mm,
based on how I get paid on a contingency fee for the difference between 88,000 and 100,000. I'm losing money instantly when I take that claim. No attorney's going to take that claim.
right.
So you have this weird situation where these people need help, but I have other claims that I'm working on that are actually going to pay me so I can feed my family.
Right.
And so there's a lot of things that go into that. So what we're seeing is these insurance companies are diminishing it to a level where they know that the insured probably isn't going to fight back because it's just below the threshold of any attorney or public adjuster or insurance appraiser really taking that on. So have you, oh, go ahead.
I would say, and I think a lot of times the insurance, I don't want to just beat up on insurance companies, but I mean, I think sometimes they kind of bully those individuals. In the commercial side, not nearly as much. I think there's a
Yeah,
little bit of a difference in sophistication
there you go.
with who you're working with. Many of us have attorneys on staff. Like, it's a
Right.
different sophistication. But I know when I talk to some of my residential counterparts, it's a very different. When you have your home claim, they're going to handle things very differently because the level of sophistication isn't going to be there. They're not going to know what they can do, what they can say, how to make those arguments. Whereas, the commercial world, there's a little more resources that's there. Which, I get it. Insurance companies are a business too. They've got to do what they've got to do to stay, happy to shareholders and be
Right.
profitable, and completely understand that side of it as well. But
Totally.
it's that struggle of, okay, how do you work, how do you educate, and again, that's where my residential counterparts, how do you help coach those clients through that process, especially if they're buying a property who's got a claim in the middle of the transaction and going through that. Not my world. I couldn't give you answers, but
Right.
it's a struggle for them.
Yeah. And so interestingly, not to plug something that we're doing, but it's just kind of in what we're talking about is we're releasing a program. It's actually in beta right now where it's a subscription model to us as a consultancy. It's called Win Your Claim. And so you and I can talk about that offline, but it's really designed to help anybody that is insured facing. So real estate agents, contractors, property managers, things like that, where they can come into our group coaching and we can share with them, hey, you have a claim that you're $12,000 short on. No public adjuster wants to take that. No attorney wants to take that. But you can bring that to us and we can show you if it is small claims court, if it is writing this letter, if it's requesting this, if it's putting the adjuster on notice with these three bullet points. Here's a copy and paste this from your insured to the insurance company, which we can do as a consultant, right? And so we're really trying to fill that gap because, man, I see these people that need help and they're old ladies or people that don't speak English as well and like just getting totally screwed and taken advantage of. And so we're trying to fill that gap and we're trying to figure out how to do that. And I think we've cracked that nut. So TBD, stay tuned.
But it sounds exciting, and it sounds like as you're sitting there talking, I was like, man, I wish there was some type of program. It sounds like you guys are already doing it, so that's awesome because it sounds like there really is a need
Yeah,
and
there is a need. So
good stuff.
yeah, you and I can talk offline about it because I'd like to pick your brain on that. But so one of my other questions is, have you ever worked with a public adjuster or know anybody that has worked with a public adjuster?
So the only time would be in the handful of claims that we've had where you have a independent public adjuster that comes out
Okay,
and takes a look at it. But specifically anybody in the database I work with on a regular basis, no.
cool. Yeah, so let me just clarify this for you, for the audience, and just there's three different pools of adjusters. One is a staff adjuster that sits behind the desk and is like has the insurance company's shirt that they come out to your property and it might be a red shirt and his name might be Jake. I don't know, some version of
Right.
that, right? So the second is an independent adjuster that is independent of any insurance company, but they still represent and work for the insurer or the insurance companies. And then there's a public adjuster like us that actually represents the property owner. It's actually illegal for us to represent the interests of the insurer unless it's a catastrophe, like the wildfires in California. Like they need people to help these thousands of displaced residents. So as a public insurance adjuster, I could say, hey, I'll be your IA. But besides that, we only really represent the policyholder or the insured. And so the difference is my interests as a public insurance adjuster are directly aligned as your interest as a commercial property owner. And so when I
Huh.
get involved for you, I basically I say this and it's not exactly, but I am you for lack of a better term. I am you, I'm your representative, I'm your advocate, and I fight the insurance companies when they don't want to pay the claim. And so as simple as that is if you ask 1,000 people, they've never even heard of a public insurance adjuster, right? 995 of them haven't. And so that's part of the reason that I've created this is because there are resources for insureds that they don't even know exist. And I would say the majority of people are problem aware. Hey, I have an insurance claim, but solution unaware. Oh, hey, I could hire a public adjuster to navigate this whole thing for me. I pay them a small contingency fee and they know what they're doing every day. Like we do this every single day. You could tell me about a claim, and within 3 minutes, I'd be like, here are the seven things that you need to do, right? Just
Right.
because, just like you on the commercial brokerage side, right? Like you know exactly what needs to be done. But the reason I bring that up is because in Texas, in San Antonio, I don't know the last time they got like a really big hailstorm, but dude, your guys' hail is insane compared to Colorado.
Texas. Yeah, it's absolutely Texas sized.
Bigger, everything's bigger in Texas, including the hail. But so the difference is we get smaller hail, but it's more dense. And so
Mm.
you probably heard like kickers in football kick the ball further in Denver, right? And same thing, pitchers can pitch a little bit faster. It's because the air is a little less dense. And so we get more dense hail flying through less dense air because that hail is compacted based on the weather that we have here. Versus Texas, your hail is, dude, it is big. So I worked the city of Abilene.
Yep.
There was a huge claim for the whole city. Okay. This is how crazy it was. Is the insurance company came out like, oh yeah, we'll give you $4 million. And they're like, then the city, like, most people are like, okay, that sounds like a lot of money, which it is. Except for they started on their first building, which was actually a health insurance company's building. And they got through the roof and they had spent the $4 million. And they're like, wait a second, what's going on here? And so they hired public insurance adjusters with this previous company that I worked for. And man, there it was so ridiculous. I'd never seen anything like it. We
Mm.
went to the airport and the dents on the aluminum pipes were, I was just like, is this even real? It was crazy, but it
Mm.
was such a good experience. I was up and down like 100 buildings in 30 days, just like up and down, up and down, up and down, like document, 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 like three to four buildings a day. And
Mm.
it was crazy. I have another story about that I can tell you offline, but man, it was insane. So, how long have you been in the commercial real estate brokerage?
Yeah, so about 15 years now. So I
Wow.
started in commercial real estate after the Army, went to college to get a degree in real estate, and thought I'd be the smartest house flipper there ever was, and never
Yeah.
flipped a house, so maybe I was. But kind of got looking for a part-time job. Happened to be a fraternity brother that was running a small little family office, and they needed somebody to answer the phones, and they were doing commercial property management, and
Cool.
never in a million years would have thought this is where I would have ended up.
Yeah. So, what drew you to that and what kept you in it?
To commercial real estate.
Yeah,
I I think one, it was challenging at first. It was a little bit different.
sure.
Definitely not what I was doing in the Army. Definitely not. I wasn't fixing helicopters, right? So it was definitely a very different career field. But at least in property and asset management, there was a lot of similarities to at least fixing a building versus fixing a helicopter. The principles of maintenance were the same. And then, as I was kind of progressing in my military career, I was starting to get to the point where we're looking at budgets and those things. Well, that's what I was already starting to do in the in a property and asset manager, and started kind of growing from there. And it was just fascinating to me. It was all about puzzles. How do you make this work better? How do you make this make more money? How do you start putting
Yeah,
these things together? And it got to the point where I was kind of running across the country doing acquisitions and dispositions work,
oh,
which
cool.
was kind of where I thought I was going to be done. Traveling all the time, not knowing what city you're waking up in, or coming you're going to Denver and then having to drive to Castle Rock and then another 2 hours to somewhere else, then back
Right.
to Denver to fly out somewhere else, all
Yeah,
in a day. It was exhausting.
yeah.
Um, I think what really changed was I got hired at a place called Port San Antonio.
Okay.
So it is a former military base, so shut down Air Force base, and I was part of the redevelopment authority. And I got hired to kind of do a similar role that I was doing with the REIT when we're doing acquisitions, dispositions across the country, but it
Sure.
was locally there, and we were just having babies and that kind of stuff. So, wanted to be home and be dad.
Yeah,
And I think there I realized in real estate, you can absolutely impact people in your community.
yeah.
We were really doing a lot more economic development, but I was really the real estate arm of a lot of that economic development. So I can remember vividly, we were doing a lot of cybersecurity work and those kind of things, bringing in contractors to do that and workforce training and those things. And I vividly remember we had a McDonald's that was just off where our property was, and you got a short lunch, you run to McDonald's, you grab something to eat real quick, and do that 2 or 3 times a week. You get chubby like me, but you also get to know the staff, right? And there
Sure.
was a book that was in the back that it was a 18, 19-year-old guy with, had a, kid and had a long-term girlfriend and working, trying to support his family. And, he's like, hey, man, you're here all the time. What's going on, Harry? Just real friendly, nice guy. And just got talking to him and started telling him about the programs that are literally, not even a quarter mile down the street from where he's working. He's like, I know those were there. And so I'm gonna look into it. I'm gonna look into it. And another month or two later, I'm kind of walking through towards the end of the day, and I look into one of these training facilities, and sure enough, old dude who's sitting there, flipping burgers at McDonald's during the morning shift was now over there taking this training program. So he was going from making, maybe, 10, $12 an hour to making 30, 40, $45 an hour once he traded that or once he completed that program. And I don't know. At that point, I realized I was like, wow, in real estate, like we can make our clients a lot of money. We can do a lot of those things, but when we really do our job right, and we really do sit down and do our job the way we should be doing it, you change communities, you change people's lives. Like that's one of the things I never would have thought of that we're able to do. If you're working with a small business and you do your job and you put them in the right place that is absolutely going to make them successful, that's that small business owner who's now opening their second location or third location. Their kids are now, getting ballet lessons and all those things that you're really helping spur so much of the economy, so much of
Oh.
of all that. And I don't know, just the fact of kind of knowing that some kid who may be president someday had an impact because of me doing my job right, and their mom or dad was able to run their business more successfully because I did my job right, or I brought in the right organizations to help train. And I don't know, to me that's an awesome responsibility, but an awesome reason to why to keep at it and keep going.
Ah, oh, I love that. Yes. I love that so much. So I'm going to ask you the last business question, then I'm going to ask you some personal questions.
All right.
You got the time?
Sure, sure.
All right. So, what are you seeing in the real estate market right now, commercial side, and
Okay.
just your opinions and thoughts of where we're at now and where we're headed, and then we can start wrapping this up.
Oh man, that's a loaded question. I don't know we'll
I
have time.
know.
Um,
Ah,
you know, I think I primarily work in office, so we can start there. Office is in a weird place,
sure.
and I know a lot of my colleagues that 4 or 5 years ago were working in office are now not working in office. They're working in other product types, and I've kind of chosen to stay with office with the idea that when everything gets better, I was the guy that stayed with them. And that was kind of the thought process. But I mean, as we as we get going longer and longer, it's like, I don't know how much longer I can hold out. Because it's a tough market. People are working from home. We're seeing a difference in the way that employees want to work and how employers want them to work, and that directly impacts the way the office market is impacted. So it's been very interesting to see how that's happened. What I can say for San Antonio compared to other places in the country, uh, we've kind of come back for some of it. We're already,
Good.
pre-COVID occupancy. We have been lucky that most of our major employers are in person. Between cybersecurity, looking at medical testing and medical or research and those things, you don't test anthrax at home, right? You got to be in a lab to do that stuff. So
We hope you're not doing that.
let's hope not, right? If not, there's the group called the FBI. They'll help you out.
That'd be
Uh,
great.
but these are jobs that you have to be in some type of office. You have to be in some type of
Yeah.
laboratory space. So we've been relatively blessed that that's what our big drivers in our office market hasn't been nearly as bad. Multifamily, I think, is interesting as well. That when we've seen interest rates just skyrocket. And many of those folks were buying and selling very quickly. They kept going, and the banks were giving 0% interest on some of these loans. And ultimately, we're at the point now where the market isn't going up anymore, and there's people stuck holding the bag.
Right.
What looked like just great investments, and it kept going up and up and up over the last few years. The interest rate hikes absolutely just kind of destroyed that, and we'll see where that goes. I don't work a ton in the multifamily space, but it is something we're watching. And I have my lending partners come on a regular basis, goes, hey, you got anything not office and anything not multifamily? I've got to restructure a portfolio. And when they're calling me for something that's not office, and I'm an office guy,
Yeah.
they're hitting the bottom of the barrel.
Right.
Um,
Right.
Industrial's been a relatively good market. We've seen a
Oh,
lot of demand for industrial. Not to get way too political, but if the tariffs and all that kind of stuff work, that would be part of the play, as we could see more demand for industrial. It's a
good point.
loaded question to start diving into and all that, right?
Sure.
But just looking at the business side of it is that if manufacturing starts coming back into the United States, or the majority of it starts coming back to the United States, is going to be a demand for more industrial space. And
Yeah.
it's already a good market. And if I was a betting man, I would probably be looking at industrial space, anticipating what this current president's going to do, and where it may go over the next handful of years. When it comes to retail, I don't do a lot of retail. I kind of found that wasn't what I do. I don't follow the customer journey. That's just not me. I'm much more of a nerd, the backside looking at spreadsheets.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
with retail, what's been fascinating is that I think nationwide, it's like a 2 or 3% vacancy rate. Like there is no space anywhere in the country, and everything they build is basically being taken up as quick as possible. And one of the things we've noticed here locally too is it's not necessarily the at-risk developers that are going out there and doing it. It's the HEBs that are coming in, the grocery store chains that are coming
Mhm.
in, developing the store for their location and all the
Everybody else kind
stuff
of
around
facing.
it.
Yeah.
And there's no space. I don't say there's no space. There's not nearly as much space as there is for retail. And fascinating. If you talk 2020, 2021, everybody's like retail's dead, everything's going to be
Totally.
online. Online's going to be the new thing that, nobody's ever going to go into a store again. And to be fair, I mean, my porch some days would indicate the same thing, but we're now looking at the other side where it's coming back. We're seeing a lot more experiential retail. We're seeing a lot more
Yep.
demand for retail space because we're ready to go back and shop. And I think we're desperately looking for that third place. But I don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting. There's a lot going on. It's definitely fascinating. We're definitely in unique places in the commercial real estate market that we haven't been in a lot of years. And selfishly, that's part of the reason why having a good broker on your team is important because
Huge.
I spend all day studying this stuff, looking, seeing what's going on, and we see people do deals that may not make sense long term, but we're watching the long term. We're seeing what's
Yeah.
going to happen.
To that point, well, I think when things are easy, people like are just like, oh, I could do this myself. But when it gets difficult and it's way more challenging in the times that are here, I think this is where brokers like you shine. Like, I need your help because there are so many moving parts. And to your credit, what you had just said is I don't think most people really understand. Again, this isn't political, this is just what's happening. Is the tariffs, how does that affect you? How does it affect me? How does it affect my portfolio? And like you said, if you're a betting man, you're moving your focus into industrial. That's not something I would even think of. And so the fact that you can bring this knowledge and the practical application of what's happening in the world, which I don't know a single person in my sphere that is controlling what's happening at those levels. I don't. But what we can do is we can react appropriately and proactively to set ourselves up and our families up to win. And so I don't know who said it. I'm going to say it's Warren Buffett, but I have no idea. But he says wealth is never destroyed, it's just transferred.
Right.
And that's what's happening is like, can you get in the way of that transfer so it's transferred to you and be educated enough or at least proactive enough to start educating yourself to be in the way of where that transfer is going so you get some of that wealth? Or you can stick your head in the sand, which I know a lot of people that are doing that and just get to be bypassed, right? And so again, not getting political, but there's opportunities everywhere in every single market. I have made money in every single type of market no matter who is president, I've been able to succeed. And it's because I want to continually educate myself and surround myself with people like you, Will, that can help educate me because I don't have that knowledge. Now, if you want me to adjust your claim and get you the most reasonable amount of money that we possibly can, I'm your guy. But that's what I think really we strive and succeed as America is because we really rely on people that have the knowledge like yourself. So that's awesome. So I lied. I said that was going to be my last business question, but I have one more that I've
Yeah.
really been asking a lot of people because I'm a nerd and it sounds like you are too. But do you think, or how do you think AI as a whole is disrupting your industry and or the world or what you see? And the reason I ask this is because most people are still like head in the sand about this too and don't really understand what's happening in the marketplace. So go ahead.
Yeah, I'm actively using AI on a regular basis, and I kind of thought everybody else was too.
Mhm.
I sit on some National Association of Realtors committees and some research aspects for all that kind of stuff, right? Diving more into the nerd side of things. And I think they're getting ready to publish some stuff as well. So I don't want to take too much of their thunder, but
Sure.
talking about that even in real estate agents in general, the vast majority are not using AI. They're aware
Right.
of it. They
Yeah.
know that maybe it can write a nice listing description, but is not actually doing more in the other things that are out there. So I think that there's definitely things that I know in my world where looking at, demographics, understanding what businesses are going to do best in this demographic, that demographic. AI has sped up that research. I mean, what could take hours can take minutes.
Mhm.
And we've absolutely started utilizing those things in the property management space. I teach for the Institute of Real Estate Management, and I
Cool.
think 2 years ago I asked the question. I was teaching one of the budgeting and financing classes, and I was like, "Hey, how many of you guys are using AI?" And everybody's like, "I don't really know how." And the next year I taught it again. I asked the same question, and you get 3 or 4 hands coming up, and how are you guys using it? And some basic use cases. In the most recent time we taught it, you get about a quarter of the class go up, and how many of you guys are using it for your budgets? And you get 4 or 5 hands that went up for that point, and they're like, "Oh, well, here's what we're doing." I was like, "Are you seeing them more accurate?" And they're like, "Well, yeah, we're actually starting to see things that are maybe a little bit more accurate, gives us a better idea." And they're starting to see that we can start utilizing AI to help crunch those numbers and get much more accurate than what would take hours or sometimes days to do. So absolutely, I think we're seeing things change. I think we're seeing a lot of things start to evolve as well as we start getting into agency with AI, and we're starting to get into those aspects that it's funny. Even my admin, I put down everything I teach, everything I've done, uploaded every LinkedIn article or every LinkedIn and social media post that I've done, and I've joked that this is Will's mini brain. And when
Yeah.
my admin a question, she can jump in and ask what Will's mini brain thinks, and
Mm.
it's giving pretty decent answers, especially when we start building social media content and those kind of things. But
Yeah.
even at that, the other day, I was asked, "Hey, can you come up and give a presentation about something in commercial real estate?" I was like, "Well, that's broad." Right into AI, hey, what would be timely? What would work out of the
Right.
polygons you have? And here's 7 or 8 topics that made sense. So yeah, absolutely. I think AI is coming in, and we're actively looking at how do we better utilize, how can we get better response times. One of the things we're looking at, even within our brokerage, as well as sitting down and putting in all the Texas real estate law inside of it, putting all of our policy procedures, putting in market data, putting in all those things so that if an agent's got a question and they can't get a hold of me directly, I'm in an interview or I'm doing something, right? They can jump onto this chatbot real quick or to this AI,
Mini
GPT,
brain.
and basically jump in and say, "Hey, what is this?" And it gives them good knowledge. And we've
Yeah.
even seen with leases. Hey, how many of my leases have an expense cap? Okay, well, it'll go through what would take hours. So there's so many use cases inside of real estate that could be used, and I don't know if we're getting them all, but we're definitely starting to get into it. Real estate is generally a little slower to adapt. I've got a colleague out of MIT who studies nothing but prop tech, and he said that when it comes to things like fintech, you can go out there and make a ton of mistakes, but in prop tech, real estate professionals are generally slower to adapt,
Hmm.
and it's because there's no room for error. If they make an error,
Right.
they
Right.
stop.
Right. Yeah. You make an
And
error, it costs you millions of dollars.
right, and so if you make those mistakes, they're going to write you off from there. So
Right.
you've seen a slower adaptation to it, but I think once it starts to really take off, it'll absolutely change a lot of aspects of how we do business.
Yes. Yes. I love it. And I think it's going to disrupt so much. There's a report by a huge world organization that came out 2 weeks ago. I did, I posted about it on my socials. I don't know if I actually did a video about it, but basically, interestingly, one of the top 15 things that are going to get displaced in the next 5 years to 2030 is claims adjusters. And I think
Really?
more so on the insurance company side than the
Mm.
insured side like us. I think we're maybe 5 years past that. So 10 years and we're going to be displaced, right? And I always tell people just add yet to the end of, well, AI hasn't figured that out yet
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's going to. And I really use my platform to help educate people related to that as well, because if you're not ready for it, it's going to be a smack to the face and it's not going to be pretty. But I think as you prepare for it, understand it, and really start adapting to those changes, you can really be at the forefront. So, like you were saying, real estate, slow to adapt. So, you're probably in the top 1% of people in your industry that is using it to a benefit. And I love hearing how other people are using it because I'm like, oh, dang, I could use it that way too. And so I started using GPT in January of 23. So I was in a men's program called Wake Up Warrior, and the guy that runs it, his name's Garrett, and he's like, "Hey, if you guys aren't," so he told us in December of 22, "If you guys aren't using this, you're going to be behind." So like right after GPT came out, I started using it, but I realized I'm like, it's not smart enough, kind of to your point with real estate. And now I will tell you, January of this year, I'm like, it's smart enough. it can do a
Oh,
lot of the things that I needed it to do. I trust it now. And so I digress, my friend. We're running out of time, but let me ask you this on a personal note. Who is Will Curtis behind I don't want to say facade of work, but you understand, like we are more than just our work. We are more than just the podcast and the things we do. And who are you really on a personal note?
yeah, I think it's interesting you ask the question because that's something I think just in my professional development and personal development, I've kind of been struggling and trying to figure out for the last handful of years, right? Is
Sure.
that I was soldier, I was student, I was,
Yeah.
professional, now it's starting to change into husband and dad and seeing kind of how life changes a little bit. And, I think one thing that's kind of remained consistent both personally and professionally is I always seem to be the person in the back end who's helping everybody else find success. That
Yeah.
generally tends to be where I am, whether it's
Yeah.
my adult son who's trying to figure out how is he going to start his first business and coaching him through it, whether it's, supporting my wife and the awesome things that she's doing in her career or the things that she's wanting to do personally.
Yeah.
For me, I think I find the most fulfillment of watching everybody else around me become successful.
Yeah.
And it was interesting that it took a while. That what a lot of people don't know about me is that right after high school, I was actually going to school to be a minister. I was going to
Yeah.
seminary,
I
doing
didn't
all
know
that
that.
kind of stuff. And we talk about it every now and then, but not all the time.
Sure.
And I was preaching and teaching and doing those kind of things. And then when I left that portion of a career field, and that's a whole nother story for another time. I ended up going in the army because I thought I was going to be a pilot, and I quickly found myself kind of that coach and teacher and mentor in the army. And then when I got out of the army, I quickly found myself moving right back into the same role. And in hindsight, looking at it, I was like, well, that's who I am. I'm the one that's always kind of helping everybody else find success, but
Yeah.
it took a few years to really sit down and dive and what do I feel charged at? What am I doing? And noticing that is both, you know, in my professional and my personal life. And I give my wife a ton of credit because she's the one who's like, yeah, dummy, like you just kind of just flat tell me, yes, that's who you are. That's what you do. You should know
Yeah.
this by now.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, brother, I mean, throughout this whole interview, the thing that has come to my mind about you is you have a true servant's heart. You are serving so many other people, and so many other aspects of your life has been service. And so I appreciate that and thank you for that. But I see that you have a true servant's heart. And that's incredible because I think if more people were able to interact with you and see that you actually truly care about them more than just the business, it's such a different place. And so that's why I love asking that question at the end of the podcast, is because we get to see a little bit behind the veil of, like, we all have this image of, like, I'm in business, and I'm in business and I love business. I've been an entrepreneur since I was in grade school, right? And that is absolutely part of who I am. But who I truly am is I'm a father. I have two children and I love them dearly. And I have grown into that role so much more today than I have ever. And it's so much more satisfying and like it, you get this because you're a father too. Like when you
right.
were first a father, you're a totally different person today than you were then, right? And so
Absolutely.
it's so interesting. But I truly appreciate the heart that you have for service and helping other people, because people like you make this place a better place to be in. So thank you so much, brother. Thank you for being here. How do we find you on socials?
Yeah, so if you're looking for me, it's real simple. It's at Will Curtis CCIM on just about everything that I've got that's kind of real estate related. I
Cool.
do run a podcast myself for veterans that are transitioning from military service into any career in real estate.
Nice.
So vets in real estate or vets in RE at really anywhere you go for social media as well. And we kind of do some of the same stuff you're doing here, kind of tell the story, what's worked, what hasn't worked, who are you, who is the behind the agent, who's behind the appraiser, and all those
Yeah.
things as well. And kind of trying to tell some of those same stories as well, because that was one of the scariest decisions I made in my life, was decide to leave the military and go be a civilian and go hang out with all the civilians, which were all weird and strange, and it's a different world. And I know our veteran population a lot of times struggles with that, and many do
Sure.
much better than others. And if we can find a way to help them get through, that's what we're trying to do, is help them find that success they can. So it's vets in real estate there. And then of course for me again, Will Curtis, CCIM, is the best way to find me through social media.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Will. I really appreciate it. And for all of you that are listening, you continue to enjoy our content. Thank you so much for subscribing. Please comment, share, and like this video because we're going to create more of this. Will, thank you for being here. Any final words?
No, Taylor, thanks for having me. And again, I appreciate everything you're doing and the example that you're setting. Like I said, in the space that's out there, it's crowded, and you're obviously very genuine in how you're getting through. So appreciate what you're doing as well.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.